As the Cherokee legend foretold, upon a blood moon, an ancient evil will be unleashed upon the earth.
We've got all craziness going on outside right now, and until we figure out what's going on, I don't want anything else to happen to anybody like it just happened to my men out there.
I'm telling you, it's a wicked evil risen from the dark abyss, ready to wreak havoc and claim souls.
It's more than a wild beast or a common fowl. It's a monster.
After the sun set and the first light of the full moon touches the eggs, they will hatch. When the eggs hatch, we will all die. Bloodspawn.
Light it up!
So where did the interest in adapting the legend of Uktena come from?
Where did we first come up with that?
That was, that's a pretty good question. I knew we were looking around for some inspiration, you know, for a movie. We knew we wanted to do something in the creature feature space, and we wanted to do something different, something fresh and authentic. And then I think, David, you stumbled upon the lore first.
Yeah, I looked into some Native American monster mythologies, and I really, you know, I grew up in western North Carolina, not far from the eastern band of the Cherokee Nation. And, you know, we stumbled across Uktena, which is not widely known at all. I believe there's maybe been a mention of Uktena in a few TV shows and maybe a few smaller movies, short films.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the first feature.
Nothing really like
feature.
telling the story.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So
putting it as a part of a, you know, a feature-length movie for sure.
Now, what was the process like in designing your iteration of this legendary creature?
yeah, well, we really wanted to try to be authentic and stick with the actual Cherokee description of the monster, and there are some, you know, variances in that. It's a folklore, a folk legend, and you know the nature of folk stories like that is they change over time, or they're flexible, or they change. So it's not the same description in different tellings. And in some versions, the Uktena has feathers all the way down instead of scales, and in others it has arms, like we chose to depict in our movie, but in others it's just a serpent, just a snake with wings, like a dragon. So there's a lot of variations on that.
Now, in the film, it very much has a style that is like a retro movie. Obviously, the film was shot on digital, but it's very obvious that there was a filter or something put over it to emulate that. And it's really good. What was that like? Where did that decision come from? And the style of the film feeling more like an 80s film? Where did that come from?
Well, we're children of the 80s,
Yep.
so we grew up on that, and we watched a lot of monster movies back in the day, right before digital hit, you know, which was, you know, Jurassic Park was in '93. So previous to that, even right up until Jurassic Park came out, a lot, especially lower budget, straight to VHS monster movies, were all done with like stop motion or puppets, miniatures, Gremlin style, you know. So, you know, we decided, and we didn't originally set out to do it this way, but even while we were shooting the movie, we discussed it with some of our actors. Bill Oberst Jr. He was when we told him we're thinking about going a more practical route.
No, you
he said,
have to do
You
it.
have to do it. So he really pushed us into that route, going practical. And we explored doing stop motion, but that is so expensive and time consuming. We just couldn't do it on this budget for 6.5 minutes of monster, which is what we have in the movie. So we went with the next best thing, miniatures, like Return of the Jedi and the Rancor, and we wanted to go that route. So that's what we did. And we had a really talented artist in Mexico City, Luisa Roscoe Perez, created the puppets for us. And we also had Pete Gerner, who's a really good special effects artist and makeup artist. He did the tail and the talon for the close-ups whenever the tail was swinging or coming through the roof of the cabin. So yeah, we had a good team of practical effects builders. And then we all jumped in and did some puppetry ourselves. Pretty much everyone here at the screening was helping with that. And
Animating the puppets over the live action footage.
Derek was directing that stuff, and I was actually wearing a green screen suit and moving puppets. So
But
it was
yeah, I
fun.
mean, we love that we love that feel. We love that that 80s aesthetic, and even more than like the visuals, we also wanted to lean in with the audio track as well.
Yep.
So we leaned into that synthy 80s kind of sound, and really just went for it, and hoped our audience would get it.
Craig Buddy is our associate producer and the composer, and he just nailed it with that 80s sound. Yeah.
Speaking of the special effects, how did you do the compositing and getting the special effects in with the live action drama sequences with your actors?
Sure. So at this point, we already had all the footage in the can, and so what we did was we took all the 6 minutes of footage and chopped them up scene by scene, each individual shot that it was in, and then had those ready in our green screen studio. And we had David and our other EP there to try to animate the puppet over top of the live action footage. So there was a playback monitor, and we just tried to make sure that it matched the live action footage. And then just took copious notes and then mashed it up scene by scene. And then of course we jumped into the digital process of rotoscoping, compositing, keying out, and laying in layer by layer things to try to make it blend in a little bit more.
Now, in all films, going from script to screen usually isn't 100% translated to what is on the script. Was there anything from the script that didn't make it into the final version of the film?
Yeah, there was. The nature of low-budget films, we shot this in 9 days. We ended up doing
That's the right reaction, because
Yeah.
it was insane. It was a whirlwind of a time.
And there were some pages that had to get cut, and we had to, spur of the moment. The sun's going down, we've got to get the scene made. We did have to cut some pages and figure out a way to stitch it together so it made sense and we're not losing our plot. So yeah, we did some of that. And the movie's got a shorter run time than a lot of features, but it's a healthy 76 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, there'd be a time, probably midway through the day, and it's like, oh, you're looking at the shot list like, we're not going to make it. So
Consolidate.
let's have a powwow and figure out how we can consolidate.
Yeah.
What can we chop to keep things moving?
Yeah, yeah. Which is tricky when you're dealing with effects shots, because you got to get those a certain way, locked down or whatever. So.
Was there a specific scene you can mention that got cut that you wish you could have included?
I don't think we cut any scenes entirely. We just cut parts of longer scenes, and it did typically, if we're going to cut, it's going to be the talk scenes where there's a lot of talking in the cabin, or right after, don't want to give anything away, but right after a big encounter with the monster in a field. There was a lot of back and forth with the characters arguing about what to do next, and we could chop that easily, so we chopped about 2 pages out of that scene. And you know, it's a matter, we didn't lose any scenes, we just lost a little bit of dialogue.
And our actors were a great help as well. You know,
Yeah.
they played they're like, oh, I don't know, we could probably, you know, get this out of there. You know, I'm not sure, you know, that's totally necessary for the character. And
Yeah.
so it was a big help. You know, it was a team effort trying to figure out, you know, what to cut, and what to keep.
Speaking of your actors, how did you find your cast?
Yeah, well, 2 of them, R. Keith Harris and Roger Willie, I had worked with before on previous films. Lost Stallions, The Journey Home, both of them were in that. And then I had worked with Keith in the Pirate Kids series that I did, a kids series. So that's how I got them. For Raw and for Bill Oberst Jr., you know, I was fans of Bill Oberst, is pretty well known in the indie horror world. So I connected with him and I believe Raw through Slated.com. We were on Slated, and they're actually credited in the film. So that's where I connected with them and reached out to them, and you know, got them on board. They were really excited about the project.
Speaking of the story, the script, and your actors, there's some actual pretty comedic moments. How did you balance the comedic elements with the violent elements and the story elements?
Yeah.
We always wanted it to be campy. We always wanted it to be, you know, a little bit, you know, tongue-in-cheek, a little funny, but also mixing in like moments of, you know, shock and, you know, satisfaction, you know, when the monster attacks.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just something that we kind of leaned into. You know, like we said, being children of the 80s, you know, one-liners are always something that we, you know, just had to put in there.
Yeah, there was a few one-liners, and you know, one of our mantras when we were putting everything together was embrace the camp.
Yeah.
Just embrace the camp. This what a movie like this is supposed to be fun. So we went with it. Now we did put a lot of time and attention to trying to be authentic with the Utena legend and all of that part. Mm-hmm. And we had the actors play everything straight.
Yeah.
And I think that makes those moments with a little bit of humor and comic relief even more powerful and work better. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to the film itself, you mentioned a lot about how you're influenced by growing up in the 80s. Is there any particular film or project that influenced this film in particular?
There's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was any in particular, but you know, just certainly, just the kind of aesthetic, you know, that came from the time period is something that we really wanted to capture. You know, just kind of an homage to one, you know, the grindhouse nature of, you know, the early 80s and late 70s, mm-hmm. and then sort of, you know, the tone and feel of the 80s, you know, with the music, and even in the scripting too. You know, that's something that you don't see much of these days, is that kind of like campy, you know, one-liner writing. Like, hopefully it's not too much of a spoiler, but there's one line where somebody breaks to pieces and it just makes sense.
It's natural to have him say the one-liner.
Yep.
I knew that guy would break under pressure. You know, so.
And then I got one last question here. Now, something that I really found interesting about the film is it's a period piece. It's set in the past. Where did that thought process come in, and what challenges did you guys have to overcome with having it set in the past?
Yeah, I just think the nature of the legend of Utena just lends itself to being a period piece and set in the past, and especially since this is a specifically Cherokee monster. The Trail of Tears is a very infamous period of time, and it is a period of upheaval and just, you know, horror to what happened. And if anything's going to unleash this monster upon the people, you know, according to the legend, and that would be a time period where.
And it is, you know, it didn't come without its challenges, of course, in production. You know, one, you know, of course they would have horses, you know, typically at those times, so you got to write those out.
Yeah, we're low budget, so, and I've done a horse movie, so I never wanted to deal with horses again, especially on a low budget 9-day shoot. So we intentionally wrote it so that they lost all their horses, so had them killed. So.
And then the next thing is, you know, there's a lot of the movie that takes place in the cabin, so we had to find a cabin that was, you know, authentic enough, you know, inside and outside, and so so that was a challenge in finding one, and then we had to lay in a little bit of effects to kind of, you know, sell it all the way. And I mean, it was just kind of a blast, you know, and then of course the costuming. You know, that was something that we wanted to make as authentic as possible, and try to put as much detail in there as possible, you know, as far as, you know, some of the weapons that weren't, you know, the fantastic cachet of steampunk armaments that they find.
Yeah, we had fun with that. So we had fun. Even though it was a period piece, I'm proud of what we did on our limited budget and schedule.
Now, what's the plan for release so people can watch this film in the future?
Yeah, so we've signed with Red Owl Films, which is a distribution wing of Black Mandala Films, and they're based in New Zealand, but Red Owl is going to put this out in North America and UK, hopefully sometime in the later part of this year. And they're acting as international sales agent for everywhere else, all other territories worldwide.